Hi guys, this is going to be the tutorial that's going to show you how to make this butterfly net shawl. Hi guys, I wanted to show you a little bit more on the color changes on this one. It goes from white to like a gray color, then a light blue, and then it gets darker to the very end where it gets really dark blue. And I didn't complete the skein. I just completed the row where I ended on a single, I guess shell, if you want to call that, a single peak. See how you have a single peak and then a double peak? I ended on a single peak row, and then I just added a tassel on the end of it. So I'm going to be showing you how to do this really simple repeat pattern. Now to make this shawl, I used one of these yarn cakes from Yarn Arts. It's from their flowers collection, and I'll have all that information on my site if you wanted to get the link and everything. Also, I used a 4mm hook or a size G hook. But for the purposes of this tutorial, I'm going to be using regular worsted weight yarn and a 5mm hook. Okay, to begin this shawl, you want to start off by chaining 4. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then you're going to go into that very first chain we made. You're going to form a ring. So go ahead and slip stitch, holding on to this ring. Now we're going to chain 4, and we're going to be slip stitching in this ring we just made. You can work over your tail or not work over your tail, it doesn't matter. So you want to repeat this 4 more times. So chain 4, slip stitch, chain 4, slip stitch. You need a total of 5 of these chain 4 spaces. 3, 4, 5, whoops. Oh, 1, 2, 3, 4. Did I do 5 here? 1, 2, 3, okay. So this is my last chain 4, and I'll slip stitch in there. Okay, now count the spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 chain 4 spaces. Then you'll want to, that will end row 1. So you'll chain 4, and now you're going to turn. So for row 2, you want to slip stitch in the very first chain 4 space. Then you'll chain 4. And then you want to repeat this again for the next 4 spaces. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I did this a total of 1, 2, 3 more times. But you have the initial one here, so you should still have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spaces. Or I should say 4 spaces and then 2 little sections here on the end. So 4 big spaces and 2 small spaces here. So that's the end of row 2. So you will chain 4 and turn. For row 3, you want to slip stitch in this first chain 4 space. And then you'll want to chain 4 and slip stitch in the next chain 4 space. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then you repeat that 3 more times. 1, 2, 3, 4, slip stitch. 1, 2, 3, 4, slip stitch, and then 1 more time. 1, 2, 3, 4, and slip stitch. Now you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 individual, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 individual spaces here. And that will end row 3. So at the end of row 3, you're going to want to chain 5 and turn. So we're going to chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then turn. So for row 4, you're going to slip stitch in that first chain 4 space. Then you'll chain 5 again. We're going to do all chain 5s this time. And you're going to slip stitch in the next chain 4 space. Then repeat this 3 more times. You'll chain 5, slip stitch in the next, chain 5, slip stitch in the next, chain 5, slip stitch in the next. 3, 4, 5. My nose is itching. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And this is my last slip stitch. Again, you should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spaces. And that ends row 4. So at the end of row 4, you're going to want to chain 3 and turn. Now for row 5, we want to double crochet 3, chain 1, and then double crochet 4, all in this first space. This chain 3 is going to count as our first double crochet. So in this first chain 5 space, you want to double crochet 3 times. 1, all in the same space, 2, and 3. Then chain 1, and then again working in the same space, put 4 more double crochets. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Then you're going to chain 2, and you'll do this every time after you do a shell. You'll chain 2 and slip stitch in the next chain space, and in this case it's a chain 5. So chain 2, slip stitch in the chain 5. Then you'll chain 2 again, and you'll do a double crochet 4, then chain 1, and then double crochet 4, all worked in the same space. So let's do that. Putting my first set of 4 double crochets, then chain 1, and then going back into that same space, put 4 more double crochets. So we have 4 double crochets, chain 1, 4 double crochets. Now again, we're going to want to chain 2 and slip stitch in our next chain space. So chain 2, slip stitch in the chain 5. And then probably going to do the same thing for the last shell too. Yep, chain 2, slip stitch in chain 5, and repeat for row. So that means the very last one as well. So you're going to chain 2, which we do before every shell peak area, and also at the end you always chain 2 and anchor. So we're about to do another one. So we're going to chain 2 in the space before, and then we're going to do our 4 double crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then chain 1, and then put 4 more double crochets in that same space. I'm going to have to get some more yarn. Oh, this is the end. Out of slack. Okay, so this is going to be the end of row 5, and I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. Okay, so you just ended row 5. Now before we do row 6, we're going to need to chain 5. So chain 5 and turn. Now for row 6, you're going to start off by finding that chain 1 between your 4 double crochets here. You did a chain 1, we're going to be slip stitching in that chain 1 space here. And then we're going to do that again. We'll always chain 5 to bridge the gap between these 4 here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you're going to slip stitch in the chain 2 space. Then you'll chain 3, then slip stitch in this next chain 2 space before the cluster. Now we're going to be repeating that again. We're going to chain 5 to bridge this first 4 double crochets. We'll slip stitch in our chain 1, then again we'll chain 5 to get past these 4 double crochets, and we'll be slip stitching in this chain 2 just like we did a moment ago. So chain 5 and slip stitch in that chain 1, then chain 5 again and slip stitch in that chain 2. Now we're going to do our chain 3 and slip stitch in that chain 2. Now again we're going to bridge our gaps here. So chain 5 again and slip stitch in that chain 1 space here. Then chain 5 again. Let me just see, chain 5, slip stitch in top of ending chain 3. So we're going to find the top here, the ending chain 3, and we're going to slip stitch in that space, and that will end row 6. So at the end of row 6, chain 3 and turn. Okay, for row 7, we're going to be working now in our chain 5 spaces here, and we're going to be doing a double one of these. So we're going to put one of these in this, and then chain 1, and then we'll put another one of these double crochet, chain 1 double crochets in this next chain 5 space. So let's start with our first chain 5 space, and this chain 3 will count as our first double crochet, so we're only going to be putting 3 to begin this side. So 1, 2, and 3, then chain 1, and then in that same chain 5 space we're going to put 4 more double crochets. That's 3 and 4. Then before we start our next one here, you want to chain 1, and then this one will be a complete one. So you'll do 4 double crochets, chain 1, 4 double crochets, all worked in this same chain 5 space. So it's 3, 4, chain 1, and then 4 more. 1, 2, well, I can tell this is going to take a lot more yarn. I may have to get some more here. Okay, so that's 4. And now that we're done with all that, we're going to do our chain 2 and then secure it in our chain 3 space. And then we're going to chain 2, and now we're going to repeat. But this time it'll be 4 double crochets, chain 1, 4 double crochets, unlike our first one because we had our chain 3 here. That counted as one of our double crochets. So again, you're going to put 4 double crochets, chain 1, 4 double crochets worked into this very first chain 5 space. That's 4, chain 1 in the same space here, and you can move them down if you need. 2, 3, and 4. Now chain 1, move over to your next chain 5 space, and again you'll do 4 double crochets, chain 1, 4 double crochets, all worked in the same chain 5 space. 2, 3, and 4. So once you've got your second one done here, you'll chain 2, slip stitch in your chain 3, then you'll chain 2, and then go ahead and finish your last one. I'm running out of yarn here, so I'm going to go ahead and do it off camera. Okay, I just finished my last double crochet, 4, chain 1, double crochet 4, and then that will end row 7. You want to chain 5 at the end of row 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then turn. So for row 8, let me just get down here real quick. checking my pattern, double checking my pattern as I do this. Okay, so you want to again find that first chain 1 space after our first double crochet, 4 double crochets here, and you'll slip stitch this chain 5 to bridge that first gap. Now we want to bridge the next chain 4 double crochets. So again, you're going to do a chain of 5, find the next chain 1 space here, and slip stitch. Then you'll do that again, chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, find the next chain 1 space and slip stitch. Then again, chain 5, find this chain 2 space here at the end and slip stitch. Now we're going to do a chain 3 and slip stitch in this chain 2 space. So between these, this is a chain 2, this is a chain 2. We're basically going over the chain 2s with the chain 3, bridging that gap. Now we've come back up here again, and you're going to be doing your chain 5s again. So chain 5, slip stitch in that first chain 1 space, then chain 5, slip stitch in the next chain 1 space, 3, 4, 5, then slip stitch in the next chain 1 space, and then slip stitch in the chain 2 space. Then this is when we'll do our chain 3, slip stitch in this chain 2 space, and then we're going to be bridging our gaps again by chaining 5 and slip stitching in our chain 1s for the next 3 times. You'll do that. And then the last time, just check my pattern here. I don't want to say anything different than what the pattern says, so I need to fix the pattern. So you'll chain 5 and then you'll slip stitch in the top of the chain 3. I don't have that written on the pattern, so I better do that. So at the end of row 8, you want to chain 3 and turn. So for row 9, you want to start off by anchoring this chain 3 here by slip stitching in the first chain 5 space. Then you're going to chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and slip stitch in the next chain 5. You'll do that 2 more times. Chain 5, slip stitch in the next chain 5. Chain 5, slip stitch in the next chain 5. Now we've gotten through all our little gap here above our I guess our peak area, and now we're here in the in-between, and now we'll be doing a chain 3, slip stitching in that chain 3, and then a chain 3 and slip stitching in this chain 5. Now we're going to repeat what we just did here for 3 times. You'll be chaining 5, slip stitching in the chain 5 3 times. So chain 5, slip stitch in the chain 5, chain 5, and slip stitch in the next chain 5. Then again chain 5 and slip stitch in the chain 5. You did that 3 times. Now again we've come up to our chain 3 spot, so you'll chain 3, slip stitch in the chain 3, and then chain 3 and slip stitch in that chain 5. Now again you'll be bridging that gap again. My yarn is acting funny. So we'll chain 5 again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and slip stitch in that chain 5. Then chain 5, slip stitch in the chain 5. Chain 5, slip stitch in the last chain 5. Now to end the row, you're going to chain 3, and you're going to be slip stitching in the bottom of the chain. So find the very bottom chain here and slip stitch to end your row using the bottom chain of that chain 5 here, and that will end row this will end row 9. Okay, for row 9, at the end I should say of row 9, you'll chain 3 and turn, and now we're on row 10. You want to start row 10 by slip stitching in this first chain 3 space. Then you'll chain 3, and you're going to slip stitch in this chain 5 space. Then you'll chain 2, and in this next space, and as you can see, this is the middle chain here. So you're going to be making another one of these, which is just a single chain 4, double crochet 4, chain 1, double crochet 4, all worked in that same chain 5 space like we did before. So as usual, we're going to have our chain 2 before, and we'll have a chain 2 and secure after. So do your chain 2, yarn over, start doing your peak shell here, which is 4 double crochets, chain 1, and then 4 double crochets. Then chain 2 and anchor it in your next chain 5 space. So you'll chain 3 and slip stitch in your next chain 3. And it says repeat that one more time. So again, chain 3 and slip stitch in your next chain 3 space. Then chain 3 and slip stitch in your next chain 5. Chain 3, slip stitch in your next chain 5. And now we're back up here again to the middle peak. So again, you'll want to chain 2, then do your 4 double crochets, 1, 2, 3, 4, chain 1, then in the same space you'll put another 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Then again, after one of these, as long as you don't have another one to do, you'll always do 2 at the end. So you'll chain 2 and slip stitch in the next chain 5. And that's your next peak right there. So now we're going to do our chain 3s again and slip stitch in this chain 3, and then chain 3, slip stitch in the next chain 3, and then that'll bring us up to the middle again. So after this chain 3, you'll want to chain 2 and start your thing, your next peak. So first, you want to do your 2 chain 3s. So we'll chain 3, slip stitch in our chain 3, then chain 3, slip stitch in our next chain 3. Now, oh, we're still not there. We still need to do our chain 3 and slip stitch in our chain 5. There we go. Now, chain 2, and we'll be doing our last peak here at our next chain 5 space. 3 and 4. So chain 1 and do 4 more double crochets in there. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And again, chain 2 after you get done with that and secure it in the next chain 5 here. Then you'll chain 3 and you're going to end it. Sorry, my camera stopped on me. It ran out of footage. I had to delete some stuff. Okay, so you'll chain 3 and slip stitch in this last chain 3, and then to end your row you'll chain 3, and then in that very bottom of your chain 3 here you'll slip stitch using that the bottom of the chain 3, and then that's how you'll end row 10, right? Yes. Okay, so row 11. So you'll chain 3 and turn. For row 11, you're going to slip stitch in that first chain 3 space, then you'll chain 3 again, slip stitch in your chain 3 space, then chain 3 and slip stitch in the chain 2 space. Then you'll chain 5 and you'll be slip stitching in the chain 1 space between those 4 double crochets, and then again you'll chain 5 and slip stitch in the chain 2 space after the next 4 double crochets. Then you'll chain 3, slip stitch in the chain 3, then you'll repeat. It says repeat 3 more times, so chain 3 and slip stitch, chain 3, slip stitch in your next chain 3, and then chain 3 and slip stitch in your chain 2. Okay, so I wanted to fix the pattern. Okay, so you'll after you slip stitch in your chain 2 here, your original, after you chain 5, you slip stitch in your chain 2, then you'll chain 3, slip stitch in your chain 3, chain 3, slip stitch in your chain 3, chain 3, slip stitch in your chain 3, then you'll chain 3 and slip stitch in your chain 2, which will bring you back up to your bridging of your gap again, or your bridging of your peaks again. And to do that, you'll always chain 5 and slip stitch in that chain 1. Then again, chain 5, slip stitch in the chain 2. Then again, you'll chain 3, and I'm going to go through the pattern as I do this just to make sure I did this right. Chain 3, slip stitch in the chain 3, chain 3, and slip stitch in the chain 3, chain 3, slip stitch in the chain 3. So maybe I do it 3 times. Then you'll chain 3 and slip stitch in this chain 2, and then again you'll chain 5 because you're bridging the 4 double crochets again here. You'll slip stitch in that chain 1, then chain 5, and you'll slip stitch in this chain 2. Then you'll do your chain 3, slip stitch in the chain 3, chain 3, slip stitch in the chain 3, and then you'll chain 3 and slip stitch in the bottom of your chain, your ending chain 3 here. And that will end row 11. Okay, at the end of row 11, you'll chain 3 and turn. So for row 12, you're going to slip stitch in that first chain 3 here, and then you'll chain 3, slip stitch in the next chain 3, then you'll chain 3 and slip stitch in this next chain 3. Then you'll chain 2, and you'll be working in this chain 5 and this chain 5, just like we did with these double ones here. You put a full one in this one and this chain 5, and then a full one in this chain 5. We're going to be doing the same thing with these 2 chain 5s. So after you chain 2, move over to your chain 5, and you'll put 4 double crochets in this first chain 5 space, then chain 1, and then you'll be putting 4 double crochets in the same chain 5 space. And since we're doing another one right away, you'll chain 1, and then in the next chain 5 space you'll do your next one. So you'll do 4 double crochets, chain 1, and then 4 double crochets, all worked in that same chain 5 space. 3 and 4. And then after, again, you'll be doing a chain 2 and slip stitching in your chain 3 space. Okay, sorry about that. I was trying to get some yarn going. Okay, So after you slip stitch, you chain 2, slip stitch in your chain 3 space. Now you're going to chain 3 again and slip stitch in your next chain 3 space. Chain 3, slip stitch in your next chain 3 space, and just get used to this. Between your 2 peak areas, this place in between is going to keep growing in number. So just get used to, after you've done your peak stitch and slip stitch and your chain 3, that you're just going to keep chaining 3 and slip stitching in all your chain 3s until you come up to your chain 5 again. So once you chain 3 and slip stitch in your last chain 3 before your chain 5, then you know you're good. And just chain 2 and start your peak again, your double peak. So you'll put your 4 double crochets, chain 5, 4 double crochets, 3 and 4. Then chain 1, because you're going to be starting another one really close. So then you'll do your 4 double crochets, chain 1, and then 4 more double crochets in the next. 3 and 4. And again, after you do a peak and you're done with it, you'll chain 2 and slip stitch in the next chain 3. And then again, you'll want to chain 3, slip stitch in your chain 3 until you reach your chain 5 again. Now I've reached my chain 5, so you want to chain 2 and do your next double peak stitch here. So double crochet 4, chain 1, then double crochet 4, since we have another one to do here, you'll only chain 1, then start your next peak. Double crochet 4, chain 1, then double crochet 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now you're done with the peak stitches, so now you know you need to chain 2 and secure it in your next chain 3 space. Now you want to chain 3 and slip stitch in the chain 3. Chain 3 again, slip stitch in your chain 3. And then chain 3, and again you're going to slip stitch in the bottom chain of your beginning or ending chain 3. And that will end row 12. Okay, for row 13, you will want to chain 3 and turn. It'll always be chain 3 turns from now on. Slip stitch in the very first chain 3, then chain 3, slip stitch in the next chain 3, chain 3, slip stitch in the next chain 3. So just keep chaining 3, slip stitching the next chain 3 until you reach your chain 2. Then you'll do your chain 3 and slip stitch in your chain 2, which will bring you up to where you need to start bridging the gaps again. And you know how to do that. You'll chain 5, slip stitch in the chain 1, chain 5, slip stitch in your chain 1, chain 5, slip stitch in your chain 1, and then this will be a chain 5, slip stitch in your chain 2, which brings you back up to your chain 3 area again. So you'll be doing your chain 3, slip stitch in your chain 3, chain 3, slip stitch in your chain 3. Continue to chain 3, slip stitch in your chain 3 until you get up to your chain 2, which is here. So that'll be my last chain 3, slip stitch in your chain 2, and then you'll chain 5 and slip stitch in the chain 1. You should by now be getting the hang of it, I hope. By this row right here, it's pretty much the same. You no longer will have to end the row by slip stitching in your bottom of your chain 3 anymore. You won't be adding any more on the end. So you'll chain 5, slip stitch in your chain 1s until you chain 5 and slip stitch in your chain 2, which then will trigger your chain 3, and then you'll chain 3 and slip stitch in your chain 3s until you reach your chain 2 again. So this is my last chain 3. So then I'll chain 3 and slip stitch in my chain 2, and then you'll do your chain 5, slip stitch in your chain 1, chain 5. Did I do 5? Yes. Slip stitch in your chain 1, then you'll chain 5, slip stitch in your chain 1, then you'll chain 5, slip stitch in your chain 2, and then again you'll go back to your chain 3, slip stitch in your chain 3, and this time you won't be ending by slip stitching in your bottom. So you'll just chain 3, slip stitch in that chain 3 there at the end, and you're done. Actually no, that's next round. This is the last round. Row 13 will be the last time you'll have to do this. So slip stitch in your last one, and then chain 3 and slip stitch in the bottom of your beginning chain 3. Now that's the last time you'll have to do that. From now on you'll be ending your row by just slip stitching in the last chain 3, and then you'll chain 3 and turn. So that's the last